I have a question to ask my audience. When the Bible tells us about Elijah and the widow and her son during the famine, I think that all Christians who know their Bible know the story well, that the barrels of oil and meal only had enough for that day. And consistently in my unemployment journey, I've gone to the Lord and I've told him repeatedly that I depend upon him to give me enough for today. And of course he has. Something happened today that connected with that story in a way that I never thought, I just never thought of before. And I want your thoughts in the comments. In my unemployment journey, the meal and the oil is the hope. It isn't turning out to be material things. It's not turning out to be food or utilities or anything like that. He's already taken care of that. That's there. I'm good for a little while longer. It's the hope. And I confided to my audience yesterday about talking to a former supervisor, and then today, God was so good, out of the blue, I got a call from a former client, and things are still in the tentative stage. We have more discussions, and my client, their family wants to get together with the client, and everybody needs to hash things out and come to an agreement. So it's still on the table, I should say. But I got to talk to the client, I got to talk to the client's family, and hope for the day. Hope for the day. And this just reminds me of how incredibly sweet God is. I've gone to him many times lately, and he doesn't have to be reminded, but I'll remind him, I'm your daughter, and you're my father, and fathers take care of their daughters. So God is just incredibly sweet. He loves his children, and he might not always give them what they want or what they think they ought to have in the time that they ought to have it. And I've learned a great lesson about that in the last couple of days too. So he'll keep his promises. He always keeps his promises. He cannot deny himself. So I just wanted to, this is part of my unemployment journey, and I just wanted to keep everybody updated. And something else that I've kind of been a little nervous about discussing with everybody, but we all know that women who are divorced, especially later in life, especially women who are coming out of narcissistic, maybe even psychopathic marriages, we are left near destitute or destitute. And I was brought up by depression kids. My mother was a depression kid, my aunt was a depression kid, my uncle was a depression kid. He was also a World War II veteran. And they were very frugal people. they were extremely frugal people. I can remember in that gas station my uncle owned, on the days when he would have me come and clean up the gas station, come time to wash my hands and everything, I come out of that back bathroom, and those blue paper towels, that they used to use in the shops, the one that you pulled, not the rolls, those big gigantic rolls. He didn't have those. He just had the stacks that you pulled from the dispenser, and they were blue. And I'd come out of there with the water paper towels drying my hands, and he'd be sitting in that old beat up chair of his behind the counter swatting flies, and it was like he wouldn't even be looking at me, but he knew I was like, maybe he could hear the paper, I don't know, and he'd go, "Those are $1.50 a piece. You don't need more than one. They're $1.50 a piece. You don't need to be using." So that's how frugal those people were. So I've learned a few things on this journey, and a lot of people won't like the idea of some of the things that I do, but God kept me off the street, but things were tough. I mean, things are tough now. And so back in 2019, when everybody was so desperate about COVID and everything, I was having respiratory symptoms, but that is not unusual for me. It was not unusual for me. Thank God it doesn't happen as often now. But I would have bronchitis like a couple of times a year. And I was having bronchitis, as having the whole, upper respiratory symptoms as well. And my doctor had prescribed montelukast and loratadine together, and I've used those ever since, and it's just an enormous help. But I remember we were on the screen talking to each other, and I said, "Look what I bought, and now I don't know what I'm going to do with them." So I had bought those handkerchiefs, and those handkerchiefs, they really are 7 years old. They're really 7 years old, and they have held up so beautifully. So I bought them because when I would go to church, I would be sneezing, my eyes would be watering, and I would be, I try to do it the way Claudette Colbert would do it in the old movies. I'm constantly dabbing at my nose. That's why I bought those handkerchiefs, and I got them for practically nothing on Amazon. And I bought another set, a few months ago, when I had a little bit of money and I was doing crafts with them. But I don't buy Kleenex. I don't buy paper tissues. I haven't had paper tissues. Now, there's an old box in my car that, I'm not making this up, it's going on 4 years old. And that was left over from the old car when my family broke up. And so I don't buy paper tissue. I use my handkerchiefs. And I have my little waste basket, laundry basket for them. They go in there every day. And yes, I know that's not the cleanest way to do things. That's why we have Kleenex, because they're cleaner, right? That's why they were called Kleenex. But, hey, when you're that broke, you have to get creative. And it's just something that I've stuck with ever since. The uncle that would holler at me about the paper towels, he never used Kleenex. I never saw my uncle use a Kleenex. He always had his white handkerchiefs. Another thing that I do is, now I bought these at Walmart. I do not buy paper napkins, nor do I use paper towels for napkins. These are my napkins. They're very durable. They're very thick. They are under a label called washable napkins or something like that, and you can find them in the kitchen section at Walmart. And I've had these probably a good 2 years, and yeah, they're stained, but hey, you know, if you sanitize your laundry, you're going to be okay. I mean, since I no longer am laboring under the stressful marriage the way I used to, I am a lot more, praise be to God, well than I was ever, I'm sorry to say, since I met my former husband. And another thing that I do buy paper towels. Let me correct that. I do buy paper towels. I do not use them very often. I probably don't even use one paper towel a week. And the reason for that is that I got into the habit of going to the Dollar Tree, and I would buy what I needed at the Dollar Tree. And yeah, I know that just because it's the Dollar Tree, it doesn't always mean that it's less expensive because it's $1.25. Sometimes you're actually paying more that way. But one thing that you can get at the Dollar Tree, I think you can still get them. When I saw them, I could not believe it. We knew them when I was a kid as handy wipes, and they're those rayon cloths, those washable blue and white cloths. Those are my paper towels. Same thing. I have a little bitty laundry basket that I had these little laundry baskets before the divorce, and I throw those in there. You know, you use them once, you throw them in there, and then when the laundry basket gets filled, you sanitize them in the laundry and you start using them again. And so saved me tons of money that I didn't have to spend. They really have. They've saved me tons of money that I did not have to spend. And so those are just a few of the little tricks that I've picked up along the way. And I gotta say, I've lived this way for 3.5 years, and I doubt that just a few months ago when my income was really great, when I was making higher wages with this certain private pay client than I'd ever thought I'd ever make, and I was in the money for a while, I still wasn't buying Kleenex. I still wasn't buying dinner napkins. I just continued doing what I was doing. So, you know, if I were in much better financial circumstances, I probably would not change this at all. So those are just some little tricks that you know, people who are really struggling might think about doing, because yeah, you have to lay out the money for them, but you know, when your paper towels run out, or when your dinner napkins run out, or whatever, you know, you can hunt those products down because they're reusable. And like I say, I know this is not the healthiest option on the face of the earth, but praise God, I'm not dead yet. So, you know, and people used handkerchiefs for centuries before paper towels were invented. So anyway, yeah, it's been an encouraging day, and God has really blessed me. I'm almost finished with my CNA classes. I've been studying all day for that, and but where Elijah and the barrels of meal and oil are concerned, I'd love to have some comments on that, because I never connected that with just God encouraging his children. I mean, he gives us enough encouragement for that day, and to me, that's very touching. Give me your thoughts, people. Love you all.